Hey, this is Brett, and this is either Brett and some books or accountability checks and balances, if you're on Facebook right now. And so instead of reading an essay or something out of a book, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I've seen on live feeds from Broadview and Portland, and give some feedback on what I think as far as my own experience goes. I've read a lot about theory and tactics and the reasons why things are the way they are, and kind of ways to help people access information. So, for one thing, I spent a lot of time in 2020 working especially with the bicycle brigade in conjunction with the car caravan, and that was for protest safety, which I'm a pretty timid person. Well, not timid, but I'm a pretty quiet person when I'm actually in social settings. And I guess I am timid, but it's okay. I find ways to account for that, because at every protest, there is room for everybody that wants to participate. There's somebody that is able to use their vehicle to help in marches. Car caravans are really helpful because when you're going a far distance, like some marches are miles, that makes it more accessible for people that want to participate in the march but don't have the physical capacity to for all or part of the way. So for me, being in the bike brigade, helping to block intersections to keep vehicles and fascists out from the protest, it felt like a really good way for me to be involved without having to speak to people or coordinate with people, because I can't hear well. Sometimes I just don't understand what people are saying. So it gave me kind of a sense of safety, while I was also able to do something really important by helping to keep everybody else in the protest safe. And as a male who is has no kids, no probation, I didn't even have a relationship at that time, so there were really no ways that you could, it was easier for me to get arrested and live with the consequences, and that is eventually what happened. So I would make sure that in the times that I wasn't on the bike, a lot of the time I would either be helping people eat or get information. I also I was a heavy alcoholic at the time, and so I always had beers in my backpack too. I always tried to make sure that I spread those around. And that was, another way for me to be able to meet people. Although, in retrospect, it's better to not make people intoxicated at a protest where things can go wrong. Every time that I've been to a protest and thought that something really big was going to end up happening later, it's not usually what happens, in part because a lot of us self-moderate our behaviors, and the goal is never to have a January 6th where a bunch of people just go in, shit on the walls, and don't do anything meaningful. So that's a different tangent, but I would also stand in between the riot line and the protesters, because if at that time we believed if we got beaten or arrested that it would be more meaningful to the community, but it really doesn't seem to be. Nobody should get arrested. That's the best goal. Learn how to de-arrest people. I protested in a few different areas in northern Wisconsin. I was between a bunch of right-wingers with guns and everything, counter-protesting our Black Lives Matter protest. And, I am an armed leftist now. I wasn't then. But the reality is that with courage, a lot of the time you can do more than what you need to get done without ever being violent. But it's important to make the distinction that not all anger is wrong. There's righteous anger, there's righteous disruption. We look back at what we think we would do in Western Europe during the Third Reich, but a lot of people won't even pay attention to the seriously bad shit that's going on. So don't try to make yourself a martyr. But if we do need those people, that's called a white wall. That's where white people who have more privilege stand between the police and the other protesters. And the night before Kyle Rittenhouse killed somebody in Kenosha, I was in Madison protesting for justice for Jacob Blake, and I had planned the next day to be in Kenosha when that happened, but instead I got beaten and arrested, so I took a day off and let my skin heal from the tear gas the night before. So some of the things that I've seen in current times that I have some thoughts on are, for example, last evening, Saturday, the Broadview, Illinois protest had a resistance from the Illinois State Patrol, and they were pushing them. There are two gates and two protest locations at that facility. So a mass made an unannounced march from one site to the other, but instead of going right toward where police expected, they turned left to go shut down an interstate. And that's where the groups kind of split up, because one group still wanted to go right, or they wanted to go back, and then the group with the banner is going down toward the intersection, and then they were outnumbered by police after some stragglers, decided which direction they wanted to go. And then police marched them back down to the intersection, and they arrested the rabbi, as he's been called, who was apparently in a position of leadership. I've seen him out other nights as well, brokering peace for people to get back to their cars and kind of diffusing the momentum sometimes. And that is, that's something to take note of. There are so many different tactics, and tactics are valid. Even when there's 5 different energies at one protest, that's actually kind of good. So we don't want to disavow other people necessarily, but it is important to note that when we have leaders in positions of resistance, a lot of times they can be co-opted by nonprofits or police or by the media to be a tempering factor on the actual momentum of people's free will and belief in judgment in the moment of what needs to be done. A lot of people are still attached to the nonviolence of the 1960s. That was a very different time back then, where there was significantly different tactics used on protesters, more fire hoses and batons and such, as opposed to some of the different ways that it occurs now, and also the community connections of a bunch of ministers organizing a civil rights movement is different from a lot of people who've been criminalized and racialized over the past 60 years now, to where somebody born back then in a time where nonviolence was presumably a valid tactic. Since then, they've been considered hyper or super predators, as Hillary Clinton called them. And then Biden is another person who he said not only rich kids are smart, but black kids are too. As if that's the issue. He was kind of pandering, and it came off wrong because, it's not about wealth and a relationship of balancing intelligence versus intelligence potential versus capital potential. But with the march that was occurring yesterday toward the interstate, it didn't really seem like there was anybody working in tandem with the crowd. It seems like a really unfocused mass sometimes when I watch, and I'd like to go there in person, but I don't have the funds right now. And go film and try to, help out there. But they should have been pulling trash bins into the road to stop the vehicles and police from marching effectively. A big part of an effective resistance to an ICE facility is not only confronting the personnel and amassing outside of the facility. Like, we've seen that now, we've done that now, and now it's more effective to be disruptive. So I had hope initially last night when I saw the march going for the interstate, because that is a really good way to slow things down and make it, if ICE can't make it to the facility effectively, then that decreases the amount of damage that they can do to our communities. So, peacefully shutting intersections down, using car caravans has been something that I've seen work great in the past, especially if there's a pickup truck where you can have waters easily accessible for people to just walk up and grab supplies out of the back of the truck. I'm not somebody that hydrates well, but it's really, really, really important to try to drink like a bottle of water an hour while you're out there. It's stressful, and it's physical, so make sure that you're staying hydrated and keeping your fellows hydrated. But for those protests that end up disrupting traffic or disrupting infrastructure, peacefully or however that may occur, makes a giant difference. I could have never imagined the Waymo cars that got torched in Los Angeles earlier this year as a way of barricading the road, but it happened. Whether I agree with that tactic or not, it had an effect. And so one thing that I've seen in Portland is that there are a lot of counter protesters that are in effect making the most noise, making the most of a circus. A lot of them are grifters going online and streaming and commenting about how Antifa is making them feel unsafe while they come out night after night, and just giggle with the other ones while they try to villainize people who are protesting. If you don't take seriously the First Amendment, then that really says a lot about the value of your opinion. And unfortunately, a lot of our neighbors don't care about the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or posse comitatus or due process. A lot of people don't even know that Puerto Ricans are American. People from Guam, that's America. Although they're not given equal citizenship rights, which is really fucked up, and that's why we need to decolonize and give land back to the indigenous people. I'm pretty sure Guam could do better without us there, sure. Quite certain of it. So, one important thing is to keep track of threats to the community. There are a few people out in Portland who are right-wingers but are dressed up in black, which is a double-edged sword, because the idea of black is that it makes people more difficult to distinguish from each other, and so potentially they could end up getting, blamed for something that somebody else did, in the furtherance of the liberation of our immigrant neighbors. So, if you are filming at an event, try to film in landscape and not portrait. mode. If you're on TikTok, apparently you can only film in portrait. And I don't have TikTok, but I've seen it restreamed on YouTube. And so I've gotten to know the community on the ground in Portland of weirdos that are fascist, because so many of them interview each other and dox each other, really. Like, they tell so much about each other. And so on that same side, we don't want to do that to ourselves. Self-snitching is also something that we are liable to do. That's why when we're under arrest, we say nothing more than what we have to say, and then we say that we want a lawyer. Being cooperative isn't going to protect you, because their goal isn't to make things work out well for you. Their goal is to make a story with a beginning and an end that ends with them prevailing over you. It's very deep to their core in their in the institution of law enforcement. And as a matter of fact, many years ago, I did a couple semesters pursuing a degree in law enforcement. And one of the things that really pushed me out and away from it was that when the class was asked what's our ideal career outcome with our degree, and CSI was like still top tier back then, so a lot of people wanted to be forensic pathologists. And there's some really interesting information that's come out since about forensic pathology. Like, there's a whole podcast worth checking out, Body of Evidence or something. It's amazing how poorly based a lot of the practices and sciences are. So that's worth finding out, and that's, another reason to be more suspicious and more protective of yourself and your community, because the people in law enforcement, they aren't doing well at their job if they aren't getting convictions or arrests or revocations, because a probation officer that never revokes anybody is probably going to end up looking bad on paper. But isn't that the idea? Isn't that what restorative justice should look like? People not having to go back into the system. So one important thing to tie in with all of the anti-ICE sentiment and efforts that we have going on is that we need to carry through the abolitionist education that we're beginning to get, and that we saw back in 2020 as well, because we have to decarcerate and excarcerate our system. The roots of police enforcement and disproportionate application of rules and force is not just an issue with ICE or DHS or the feds or your local police department. It's the whole damn system. It's guilty as hell. So, with that in mind, you want to make sure that you don't create more evidence for the state that puts other people at risk. So when you're filming, try to film in landscape, not portrait, and try to focus on the actions of the state more than focusing on the actions of protesters or interviewing people. You're not there to necessarily write the story or make something nice. Don't try to make a career out of it, for one thing. Because you don't want to make evidence for other people to get in trouble and be disproportionately affected. And if you want to see how that looks when it goes wrong, watch right-wing streams. And there's a lot of restreamers out there right now. So you can just Google Portland ICE or ICE protest, and it's going to come up with live feeds that you can watch. And shout out to Mercado Media. Andrew Mercado is out on the ground in Portland right now since Friday, and he's been documenting a lot of what's been occurring. When I first started watching him in 2020, he was still a Republican, and then he was trying very hard to be apolitical, and he's done a lot of different stuff. For example, doing coverage of Russian invasion of Ukraine. That's really important to him, and he has spread out from just filming at a crisis. There's a problem with riot porn. Every time I open up my messenger, and I follow some of these places that just post riot porn every day, but it also helps to encourage me to know that people in Torino and Berlin and all over are out protesting against the genocide of Palestinians, and we don't see as much of that around here. There's somehow a cultural expectation in America that we don't question authority, but we also, view ourselves as the, biggest badasses in the world. It just doesn't fit. And it's reflexive to reject people that resist authority, even though the Second Amendment was written for this kind of shit. We have the government descending down from helicopters in Chicago to raid apartment buildings and detain citizens and non-citizens. It's fucked up. The default has to be, if you're here in America as it currently exists, you are here. You don't need to be scrutinized just for your color or your accent or your language, because the people that are causing the real damage, they have American accents because they're from here. So I think that's mostly what I wanted to say for right now. But if you are in a position to film. If you're in a position to intervene and de-arrest, you could save a life. And you have more in common with the people who are being terrorized in ICE facilities than you have in common with the people that order this because they want to advance their career and seem like Billy Badass for sending Marines or the 82nd Airborne to Portland. Military members that participate in this it's been enough time. You already know that you have not only a right but a duty to refuse unconstitutional orders. And there is inevitably going to be sides. There are already sides, and you're on the wrong one. In Nuremberg, just following orders was not enough. It was not a defense then, it's not a defense now. And fascists are loud, but there's more peaceful, intolerant Americans with guns than there are intolerant fascists with guns. And we need to stand together, whether we have guns or whether we have the ability to watch live streams like I did. Some people that want to be active within the revolution or resistance or whatever you call it. There's a lot you can do from home. You can watch and report ICE activities. The apps are down, but people can still report icy conditions on Google, I think. But try to get education and not just do praxis. And education and theory are not just dusty words from 150 years ago. Explore some perspectives that you are not exposed to otherwise, like black abolitionist revolutionary thought from Irvin Kamboa. I'm so sorry, I got that, I can't think of that name right now, but I got it backwards, so I'm very sorry. But Anarchata, Kawasi Balagun, George Jackson, these are all people who have written a lot, and also read Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, because the revolution that the world needs isn't the revolution that is going to preserve the status quo for me or people like me. We've all been hurting. Some of us for centuries and centuries, and generations upon generations. So we got to put the most marginalized and vulnerable at the forefront. And as much as there should be leadership, we should make sure that the leadership doesn't come from people who are most invested in preserving the status quo, because that's what happens, and that's why white anarchist movements fail to go, because they end up getting caught in brocialism and protecting predators that look like us, instead of listening to the criticisms and warnings from people who actually experience the negative effects of these people. And also, one quick thing that I learned from why misogynists make the best informants is that when you see people who are pushy and abusive and try to just pop up and turn everything into like negative and angry things, sometimes that is police doing infiltrator shit, and sometimes that is people who have an abusive relationship with the people around them as a pattern, who might do great things for the movement, but they also rape 2 people a year. We need to listen and take seriously the harm. We need to listen to the victims and take seriously the harm that exists in our communities. And we need to do call-ins more than call-outs. Where possible, we want to protect each other from misunderstandings and bad jacketing. So if it's possible to settle things in an egalitarian manner, then that's good. That helps to protect and strengthen our movements when we can heal everybody and collectively and take accountability for our own things instead of feeling threatened by accountability. Accountability is what protects everybody. The other night I was out at a protest, and it was my first time protesting with this group. It was at the city hall, so I just showed up. I don't try to announce my activities too much until I'm actually there. And in that event, I saw some people really sizing me up and making me feel uncomfortable. But it's important that they do that. That's how we keep each other safe. So by, sitting with my discomfort and knowing that the reason that people are staring at me and doubting me is because they want to make sure everybody is safe. And so that's just, part of how it goes. It's the same thing where people have faith in law enforcement and say they're here to help us. We are here to help us. And we need to learn how to be a part of a community. And that's something that was difficult for me when I was sitting there, because I have a lot of issues of my own with paranoia and social anxiety. So it wasn't helpful for me on an individual basis, that aspect of it. But collectively, we are all better when every person is held to a level of accountability. And so even if that makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes, I did know people there. People were able to talk to others. I have been involved with a lot of people in the Madison movement, so I was able to, I have history to speak for me, as much as people need to even know. A lot of times the best secrets are the ones you keep from yourself. If you don't look into where you don't need to look into, you can't talk about what you didn't need to see. So that is called security culture, and I have some stuff available in the zines and pamphlets playlist on my YouTube channel, Brett and Some Books, if you want to learn more about security culture or a variety of other things that I've touched on here. So this isn't usually something that I do. I don't speak extemporaneously, very confidently or fluently, but I did want to give some of my own thoughts on how the protest could be made safer for people. And if you have a bicycle and you're going to a protest, maybe bike to the protest. You can really help out so many different ways. It's an entire community. It's not a moment, it's a movement. So thank you. Please Subscribe if you haven't already. I've got a lot of really cool information. I plan on doing some more cop watching. So if you would like to support, right now I'm self-funding everything that I do, and I'm not employed currently because I got fired for trying to unionize. Fuck Litter Robot, aka Whisker, aka Automatic Pet Products. But